Hello St. Paul's Geographers, and we have another video here on Dynamic Development, Unit 6, and it's going to be Topic 6.5, Uneven Development. So we're going to look at how countries have basically become unevenly developed or developed differently to other countries. And we've got a few countries on the map already mentioned. We've got the UK, we've got Jamaica, Nigeria, and then I'll kind of name drop a few other places like Cuba, Haiti, Sierra Leone, and even a couple of others as we discuss this. We'll try and make it a 10-minute or under video this time. So we're going to start off with looking at the geographical ingredients for development. Why have places developed as either rich or poor nations because of geography? So let's look at the UK, which we will call an AC or a rich country, and we're going to highlight that with a blue circle there. We're going to think first of all about the fact that it has quite a large population. Its population has grown quite significantly, right, since colonizing other places, since going around the world and taking control of places. But it's got a decent population size at the moment, which helps it to continue to be rich in most places. It's got a nice climate, and because it's got a nice climate, we can do things like farm. We can grow crops to support ourselves and keep ourselves healthy, and we can have a balanced diet. We can also trade with other places. So you can see why climate would be so important. So it's got a warm, moist, and it's got a good for growing crops climate. We also have the idea of land. Quite a lot of places with high populations, like southeast of England, London, other places like Manchester, Liverpool, Leeds, they all are built on flat land. So there's plenty of flat land for places for people to build on. But there's also a lot of good land for growing crops, which is flat. There's also a lot of land for that might not be flat, that could be good for other things like grazing certain animals. So it's really important to consider the type of landscape that you have when considering if a place has become wealthy or not. And then finally, natural resources. It's abundant in resources like those resources that are available, like water to help us farm, but also things like, steel, coal, that we've been able to, engage in industrial activities because of, and improve manufacturing, which eventually led to the Industrial Revolution, or was one of the reasons for the Industrial Revolution. So natural resources are another really important reason geographically that the UK is suitable to be a rich country, or has become a rich country. And you might think, well, for other places like Jamaica, they have a lot of these things. They have a really nice climate. Yeah, they've got a climate that is really suitable for growing certain crops. They're able to support themselves with food. Why are they not rich? Jamaica, I'm just going to kind of highlight it as a red country here because it's one of the places that has developed unevenly. It's not developed as quickly as the UK has. It's got great natural resources. It's got, a population that's not decreased in size over the last 200, 300, 400, 500 years. And land-wise, it is suitable to grow all of those crops that we've mentioned before. It's suitable to build on, typically, in certain ways. There's other reasons why it might not be, which we can get to later in later topics. But typically, it's not the worst place to grow a community. So why has a place like Jamaica, or a place like Nigeria, which, again, has a huge population, really big population, it's got lots of natural resources that people have taken advantage of over the years. It's not got the worst climate, it's got, in parts it's got a tropical climate, and land-wise there's plenty of place to grow crops on, and there's plenty of place to build cities on, as you can see in certain places like Lagos. So why has a place like Nigeria, or a place like Jamaica, or a place like Haiti not developed as quickly as the UK has? And the reason for this, escaping from the geographical ideas, is history. So we're going to put history in the middle here. And we're going to say that a place called the Middle Passage, you might have learned if you do history already, the Middle Passage was a place where people from the UK engaged in an activity called colonization, which is where you go from your location to another place with an army of people, with a group of people, boats that will take you there, and you bring plenty of resources that you can get to a place like Nigeria with, and you colonize it. You take over people from people's culture, people's land, people's freedom and money. Now, in the case of Nigeria, people became slaves, or they were enslaved, you could say, during the 15th century by people in the UK. So really important in the history of Nigeria and how they have become a poor country to look at colonization and being colonized by people from Britain at the time, which is now the UK. So they put people into slavery, they packed them up on their ships, which sounds horrible, but typically that's what happened, and they went along through the Middle Passage to the Caribbean. Just one example of how this happened. And they took them to places like Jamaica. Now, Jamaica at the time was full of natives, just as Africa would have been. So the enslaved natives from Nigeria or from other West African countries would have been taken to Jamaica, and people from Jamaica as well put into slavery, but also some of them might have been given the jobs of being in charge of slaves if they were Jamaican. So they could have become slaves in Jamaica, or they could have been in charge of slaves. So there was a reason why this really worked for people from the UK. So they took resources from Africa, okay, and they brought them, these being the slaves, to Jamaica. And what happened there was they began to farm. So over in the Caribbean, there was a lot of farming by the colonies that were created over there, and these colonies would have been made up of people from Britain, people from Nigeria or other West African countries, and people from Jamaica, some of the natives or some of the people who would have been not native or kind of lived there and had developed some more civilization than the native communities would have. Okay, now what happened after that is that they grew things like sugar. They would have grown tobacco and other very important products, which we would call commodities. Now these commodities were then taken back to the UK and turned into manufactured products, okay, like your rum, like your textiles. And it creates what we call a cycle of influence. Okay, you can see it's a cycle because it continues to happen year upon year in the 15th century onwards, and these products over time can then be taken back to Africa, traded for goods over there, but in other cases given to leaders of communities in return for more slaves. So a cycle of influence continues to happen. That cycle of influence is really important because it's a historical thing that happened, which is created problems in West Africa and problems in Jamaica. Now let's think about these problems, okay? So we've seen what has happened. We've seen that slaves were taken from these countries, brought over to Jamaica. Products were farmed into commodities which were manufactured in the UK or in Britain at the time. Now, what kind of impact did this have on the more modern civilizations of West African countries and Jamaican or Jamaican people? People all over the Caribbean, but Jamaica is the example that we're going to look at. So, an example of something that has happened is that Nigeria has a much lower HDI. It's much lower than the UK's at the moment. Okay, its HDI is 0.45, which we've seen in previous lessons. So having a 0.45 HDI in comparison to the UK's HDI of 8.9. Or 0.89, apologies. So you can see where development has been slowed in a country like Nigeria because of people being taken into slavery, people not having money because of that, or the population to support education, to support healthcare, and as a result they're still catching up. Cities are growing rapidly so that they can get to the point that the UK is at. But there's always going to be this lag, this kind of following behind and trying to improve things after places like Britain have already done. It's the exact same in Jamaica. Now, Jamaica's a little bit further ahead, maybe because of the fact that they had slaves to look after and take and use them to create these products and make a little bit of money out of it. Their HDI is 7.2. So they are on their way to becoming a little bit more developed than the UK or Britain or maybe other places that were colonizers. But because they were colonized, they're still kind of catching up a little bit as well. They've got a long way to go before they can get to the point of having very well run healthcare systems, incredibly well run education systems. No, but they are getting there. So you can see the kind of triangular or cyclical cycle of influence that it has had on the development of these nations. Have a look at the quiz after you've done this video, watch this video, and see how you get on with that, everybody.